हेलो फ्रेंड्स, 10 नंबर का हमारा यूनिट है इकोलॉजी। चैप्टर 11 ऑर्गेनिजम्स एंड पॉपुलेशन, चैप्टर 12 इकोसिस्टम, चैप्टर 13 बायोडाइवर्सिटी एंड कंजर्वेशन. Diversity is not only a characteristic of living organisms but also of content in biology textbooks. Biology is presented either as botany, zoology, and microbiology, or as classical and modern. The latter is a euphemism of molecular aspects or biology. Luckily, we have many threads which weave the different areas of biological information into a unifying principle. Ecology is one such thread which gives us a holistic perspective to biology. The essence of biological understanding is to know how organisms, while remaining an individual and hence behave like organized wholes, that is population, community, ecosystem, or even as a whole if biosphere. Ecology explained to us all this a particular aspect of this is the study of anthropogenic environmental degradation and the sociospecific of tissues. It has raised this unit describes as well as takes a critical view of the above aspects. Ramdev Mishra is revered as the father of ecology in India. Born on 26 August 1908, Ramdev Mishra obtained a PhD in ecology in 1937 under Professor W.H. Pearsall, um, FRS from the Leeds University in UK. He established teaching and research in ecology at the Department of Botany of the Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. His research laid the foundations for understanding of tropical communities and their succession environmental responses of plant populations and productivity and nutrient cycling in tropical forest and ecology in India. Over 50 scholars obtained PhD degrees under his supervision and moved on to get other universities and research institutes to initiate ecology teaching and research across the country. He was honored with the fellowships of the Indian National Science Academy and World Academy of Arts and Science and the prestigious Sanjay Gandhi Award in Environment and Ecology. Due to his efforts, the government of India established the National Committee for Environment Planning and Coordination 1972, which in later years paved the way for the establishment of the Ministry of Environment and Forest 1984. Organisms and populations. Now, our living world is fascinatingly diverse and amazingly complex. We can try to understand its complexity by investigating processes at various levels of biological organization. Now, macromolecules, cells, tissues, organs, individual organisms, population, communities, organization. We can ask two types of questions. For example, when we hear the bulbul singing early morning in the garden, we may ask how does the bird sing or why does the bird sing. The how type questions seek the mechanism behind the process, while the why type questions seek the significance of the process for terms of the operation of the voice box and the vibrating bone in the bird. Whereas for the second question on the answer may lie in the bird's need to communicate with its mate during breeding season. When you observe nature, certainly come up with many interesting questions of what types. Why are night blooming flowers generally white? Does cactus have so many thorns? How does the squares recognize her own mother? And so on. You have already learned in previous classes that ecology is a subject which studies the interactions among organisms and between the organism and its physical abiotic environment. Ecology is basically concerned with four levels of biological organization: organisms, populations, communities, and biomes. In this chapter, we explore ecology at population levels. 11.1 populations, 11.1.1 population attributes. In nature, we rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Majority of them live in groups or in a well defined geographical area. Share and compete of them live share and compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed, and thus constitute for similar constitute of for similar resources potentially inbreeded constitute for a population. So also the term interbreeding, interbreeding implies sexual reproduction. A group of individuals resulting from even sexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. All the cormorants are in a wetland, rats in an abundant dwelling, the tick food trees is in a forest tract, now bacteria in a culture plate, and for total lotus plants in a pot are some examples of a population. In earlier chapters, you have learned that although an individual organism is one that has to cope with the changed environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. A population has certain attributes, whereas an individual organism does not. An individual may have birth and death, but a population has birth rates and death rates. In a population, these rates refer to per capita increase and decrease with respect to members of the population. Here is an reproduction. 8 new plants are added, taking the current population in 28. We calculate the birth rate as 20 is equal to 0.4 of spring per lotus per year. If four individuals in the laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in the population during the period is 4 per 40 is equal to 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. Another attribute characteristic of a population is sex ratio. An individual is either a male or female, but a population has a sex ratio in the examples given. Uh, Population are females and 40% males. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If the age distribution if the age distribution percent individuals of a given age or age group is plotted for the population. The resulting structure is called an age pyramid. Figure 12.1 for human population. The age pyramids generally show age distribution of males and females. In the diagram, the shape of the pyramids reflects the growth status of the population. A, whether it is growing; B, stable or stable one; C, declining. The size of the population tells us a lot of about lot about its status in the habitat. What whenever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with another species, the impact of a predator, or the effect of a pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of any change in the population size. The size in nature could be as low as less than 10 Siberian cranes are Bharatpur wetlands in any year, or go into millions chlamydomonas in a pond. Population size, technically called population density, designed as an need not necessarily be appropriate measure of population density. It is in some as cases either meaningless or difficult or determined in an area. If there are 200 carat grass, Parthenium, a high store of forest plants, but only a single huge banyan tree with a large canopy, stating that the population density of banyan is the enormous role in of the banyan in that community. In such cases, the per size in this percent no cover or biomass is more meaningful measure of the population size. Total number is again not an easily adaptable measure. If the population is huge and counting in is impossible or very time consuming. If you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in a petri dish, what is investigations? There is no need to know the absolute population desired densities. Relative densities serve the purpose equally well. For instance, the number of fish caught per trap is good enough measure of its total population density in the lake. We are mostly obliged on to estimate population sizes indirectly without actually counting them or seeing them. The tiger census is in our national parks and tiger reserves is often based on bug marks and fecal pellets. 11.1.2 population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps it keeps changing with time, depending on various factors, including food availability, predation, pressure, and adverse weather. In fact, it is this availability, predation, pressure, and adverse weather. In fact, it is this change in population density that give us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing or declining, where whatever might be the ultimate reasons on the density of population in a given habitat during a given time period fluctuates due to changes in four basic processes, the two of which natality and immigration contribute to an increase in population density, and two, mortality and immigration to a decrease. First, natality refers to the number of births during a given period in the population that are added to the initial density. Second, mortality, it is the number of deaths in a population during a given period. Third, immigrations is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Fourth, immigration is the number of individuals of the population who left the habitat and gone where during the time period under consideration. Population density, immigration, I'm immigration, natality, mortality. If n is the population density at time t, then its density at time t plus 1 is n. N plus is equal to n t plus in bracket b plus I minus in bracket d plus e. You can see from the above for equation figure 11.2 that population density will increase if the number of births plus the number of immigrants b plus I is more than the number of deaths plus the number of immigrants D plus E. Under normal conditions, births and deaths are the most important factors influencing population density. The other two factors, new habitat is just being colonized, migration, migration may contribute most significantly to population growth than birth rates. Growth models. Does the growth of population with time show an specific and predictable pattern? We have been concerned about unbridled human population growth and problems created by it in our country, and it is therefore natural for us to be curious if different are in different animals for growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature on how control population growth. First, exponential growth. Resource, food, and space availability is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of population. Look, ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in number, as Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection. Then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. Capita births and represented as band death rates again per capita death rates as small d. Then the increase and decrease in capital N during apply unit time period small t. dn upon dt will be dn upon dt is equal to b minus d in capital N. Well, let b minus d is equal to smaller than dn upon dt is equal to rn. The small r in this equation, it's called the intrinsic rate of natural increase, and is a very important parameter chosen for assessing the impacts of any biotic and abiotic factor on population growth. To give you some idea about the magnitude or of small r values, for the Norway rat, the smaller is 0.015, and for the floor beetle, it is 0.12. In 1981, over the smaller value for the human population in India was 0.20405. Now find out, need to know the birth rates and death rates, geometric growth patterns of population figure 11.3, and results in a J-shaped curve when we plot a capital N in relation to time. If you are familiar with basic calculus, you can derive the integral form of the exponential growth equation as nt is equal to n naught e smaller e power smaller, and where nt is equal to population density after a time where small t n naught population density at time 0, a smaller intrinsic rate of natural increase small e, the base of natural logarithms 2.71828. Any species growing exponentially under unlimited resources conditions can reach the enormous population densities in a short time. Darwin showed how even a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous numbers in the absence of checks. The following is an anecdote popularly narrated to demonstrate dramatically how fast a huge population could build up when growing exponentially. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king, confident of winning the game, was ready to accept any bet proposed by the minister. The minister humbly said that if the won, he wanted only same wheat grains, the quantity of which is to be calculated by 2, then for 4 in square 3, and for 8 in square 4, and so on, doubling each time the previous quantity of wheat on the next square until all the 64 squares were filled. The king accepted the seemingly silly bet, and 64 squares were filled. The king accepted the seemingly silly bet and started the game, but unluckily for him, the minister won. The king felt that fulfilling the minister's bet was so easy. He started with the single following minister's suggested procedure, but by the time he converted half the cheese board, the king realized to his dismay that all the wheat produced in his entire kingdom pulled together would still be inadequate to cover all the 64 squares. Now think of the tiny fission doubling in numbers every day, and imagine what a mind babbling population size it would reach in 64 days. Provided food and space remain unlimited. Logistic growth: no population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited resources to permit an exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. The governments of many countries have also realized this fact and introduced various restraints with the view to limit human population growth. And in nature, a given habitat has enough resources to support a maximum possible number beyond which no further growth is possible. Let us call this limit as nature's carrying capacity K for that species in that habitat. A population growing in a habitat with the limited resources should initially a lag phase followed by phases of acceleratively and deceleration, and finally asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. A plot of n is in relation to time small t results in a sigmoid curve. This type of population growth is called very variance of report logistic growth. Figure 11.3 and is described by the following equations: dn per dt is equal to rn in bracket k minus n upon k, where n population density at time small t small r intrinsic rate of natural increases, k carrying capacity since resources for growth for most animal populations are final and become limiting sooner or later. The logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. Gather from government census data, the population figures for India for the last 100 years, plot them and check which growth pattern is evident. Life history variation. Populations evolve to maximize their reproductive fitness, also called Darwinian fitness. High or smaller value in the habitat in which they live under a particular set of selection pressures. Organisms evolve towards the most efficient reproductive strategies. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime. A specific salmon, fish, bamboo, while others breed many times during their lifetime. Most birds and mammals, some produce a large number of small sized offspring. Oysters, pelagic fishes, while others produce a small number of large sized offspring. Birds and mammals, so which is desirable for maximizing fitness. Ecologists suggest that life history traits of organisms have evolved in relation to the constraints imposed by the biotic and biotic components of the habitat in which the life evolution of life history traits in different species is currently an important important area of research being conducted by ecologists. Population interactions. Can you think of any natural habitat on earth that is inhabited just by a single species? There is no such habitat. Such habitat and such situation is even unconceivable for any species. A minimal requirement is one more species on which it can feed. Even a plant species which makes its own food cannot survive alone. It needs soil microbes to break down the organic matter in soil and return the inorganic nutrients for absorption. And then how will the plant manage pollination without an animal agent? It is obvious that in nature animals, plants, and microbes do not and cannot live in isolation but interact in various ways to form a biological community. Even in minimal communities, many interactive linkages exist. Also, all may not be reality or readily apparent. Interspecific interactions arise from the interaction of population of two different species. They could be beneficial, detrimental, or neutral, neither harm nor benefit to one of the species or both, assigning a plus sign for beneficial interaction, a minus sign for detrimental, and O for natural interaction. Let us look at all the possible outcomes of interspecific interactions. Table 11.1 population interactions. Species A, species B, plus mutualism, minus competition, plus minus predation, plus minus parasitism, plus 0 commensalism, minus 0 amensalism. Both the species benefit in mutualism and both lose in competition in their interactions with each other. In both parasitism and predation, only one species benefits, parasite and predator respectively, and the interaction is detrimental to the other species, host and prey respectively. The interaction where one species is benefited and the other is neither benefited nor harmed is called commensalism. In amensalism, on the other hand, one species is harmed whereas the other is unaffected. Predation, parasitism, and commensalism share a common characteristic. The interacting species live closely together. Predation, when what would happen to all the energy fixed by autotrophic organisms. If the community has no animals to eat, thus how to hit the to higher trophic levels of the energy fixed by plants. When we think of predator and prey, most probably it is the tiger and the deer that readily come to our mind, but a sparrow eating any speed is no less a predator. Although animals eating plants are categorized separately as herbivorous, where they are in a broad ecological context not very different from predators. Besides acting as a conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play other important roles. They keep prey populations under control. But for predators, prey species could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability when certain toxic exotic species are introduced into a geographical area. They become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. And the weakly on the pear cactus they introduced into not have its natural predators. The prickly pear cactus the caused havoc by spreading readily rapidly into millions of hectares of rangeland. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after a cactus feeding predator, a mouth from its natural habitat, was introduced into the country. Biological control methods adopted in the agricultural pest control and based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. Predators also help in maintaining species density in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species in the rocky and inner intertion communities of the American Pacific coast. The starfish passenger, an important predator in a field experiment when all the starfish or of invertebrates become extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. If a predator is too efficient and over exploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following it the predator will also become extinct for lack of food. This is the reason why predators in nature are prudent or prey sizes. Prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Some species of insects and frogs are cryptically colored, camouflaged to avoid being detected easily. Predators, the monarch butterfly is highly distrustful to its predator because of the special chemical present in its body. Interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during its caterpillar stage by feeding on a poisonous feed. Organisms and population, parasitism, mutualism. Then summary, organisms and population की summary. As a branch of biology, ecology is the study of the relationships of living organisms with the abiotic physico-chemical factors and biotic components other species for their environment. It is concerned with four levels or biological organization organisms, populations, communities, acid, and biomes. Evolutionary changes through natural selection take place at the population level, and hence population ecology is an important area of ecology. A population is a group of individuals of a given species sharing or competing for similar resources in a defined geographical area. Populations have attributes that individual organisms do not birth rates and death rates, sex ratio and age distribution, the proportion of different age groups of males and females in a population is often presented graphically as the age pyramid. Its shape indicates whether a population is stationary, growing or declining. Ecological effects of any factors on a population are generally reflected in its size, population density, which may be expressed in different ways: numbers, biomass, percent, cover, etc. Depending on the species, populations grow through births and immigration, decline through deaths and immigration. When resources are unlimited, the growth is usually exponential. Now, but when resources become progressively limiting, the growth pattern turns logistic. In either case, growth is ultimately limited by the carrying capacity of the environment. The intrinsic rate of natural increase, small r, is the measure of inherent potential of population to grow. In nature, populations of different species in our habitat or to do not live in isolation but interact in many ways. Experimentalizing on outcome. These interactions become two species are classified as competition. Both species suffer predation and parasitism. One benefits and the other suffers commensalism. Now one benefits and the other is unaffected. Amensalism, one is harmed, other unaffected. And mutualism, both species benefit. Predation is a very important process through which the trophic energy transfer is facilitated, and some predators help in controlling their prey populations. Plants have evolved diverse morphological and chemical defenses against bio herbivory. In competition, it is presumed that the superior competitor eliminates the inferior one. The competitive exclusive principle, but many closely related species have evolved various mechanisms which facilitate their coexistence. Some of the most fascinating cases of mutualism in nature are seen in plant pollinator interactions, organisms and population. 11 नंबर का हमारा चैप्टर है ऑर्गेनिजम्स एंड पॉपुलेशन, जिसमें हमने 11.1 में देखा पॉपुलेशंस, 11.1.1 में देखा पॉपुलेशन एट्रीब्यूट्स, देन पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ, then natality, mortality, migration, immigration, and then growth models, exponential growth, logistic growth, life structure, history variation, population interactions, predation, competition, parasitism, commensalism, mutualism, then summary. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.